Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to another wonderful tasting with the Virtual Tasting Society. Today, we're excited to premiere a fun and unique experience, something we have not yet done. Our friends at Heaven Hill, Jack and Christian, have kindly put together a fantastic deconstruction for us. So today, we're going to be tasting some Old Fitzgerald juice, everything from 0 age statement up to 8 years old, and then a final product. So some of you have some water in front of you. Make sure you grab some of that in a little dropper. Everything we're tasting is from barrel samples, so not available for sale anywhere, but these are cast strength, amazing samples that we're able to try. So thank you again to the boys at Heaven Hill for setting this up for us. We're excited. Welcome, everyone. I see a lot of familiar faces. If anyone is here is new, you know the drill. We're here to have fun. We're here to get nerdy. We're here to ask questions. Keep yourself on mute unless you're participating, but you are welcome to participate. Use the chat. Use all the features. Have fun. And yeah, don't be shy. On the Heaven Hill side, we have the West Coast brand ambassador. What's your official title, Jack?
That's
West Coast brand ambassador for Heaven Hill, Jack Choate.
Hi, guys. How are you? Thanks. Everyone's on mute, so no one can say anything. Vadim, thanks so much. We also have Christian Mullen, who handles our day-to-day sales here, which sounds very simple, but is quite a beast of a gig here, covering the greater Los Angeles area, a little bit up on the way to Ventura. If you're local and you see us out, make sure you flag us down, say hello, tell us you were here, and we, of course, will happily buy you a whiskey wherever we are. I'm really excited to be back with you guys and really excited to be doing this training. This is a presentation that a brainchild of my own, trying to really figure out how to talk a little bit more about the greater Larceny family, or as I have started about 5 years ago, referring to them as the greater Johnny Fitzgerald Larceny family. So I'm not sure, maybe half of you were here the last time I did one of these, so it's great to see some familiar faces. You will probably have heard some of the opening of the spiel previously, because so much of what we do really is based upon, the history and heritage of Heaven Hill, and that history is what we stand on, is what propels us each and every day to continue making great whiskey. As Vadim said, I do this to have fun. Yes, it's my job, but I do this to have fun, and so this is meant to be fun for you all. So while everyone is on mute, I have no problem if you come off mute whenever to interrupt, ask a question, start a conversation. It is a heck of a lot more fun, as you guys know, once we get into the conversation piece, as opposed to just me up here talking and throwing stats and information at you. So I imagine the majority of you are familiar with Heaven Hill. We started in 1935 out of the ashes of Prohibition, barreling our first barrel of whiskey December 13th, 1935. And from that moment still until today, the focus of that was to make the best possible whiskey and offer it at the best possible price that we possibly could. Back in 1935, the best possible whiskey was bottled and bond, and that was our focus from get-go. Today, bottled and bond is still a very important part of what we do. Bottled and bond has finally come back into the very popular scape of American whiskey. And I was about to say we feel like we are the ringleaders of it, but Fred Minnick tells us that we are. Actually, my boss, Bernie Lovers, who's our global American whiskey ambassador, has been yelling and screaming and gnawing of teeth, everything about bottled and bond since he got into the industry in 2005. And Fred actually gave him the moniker, the driver of the bus or the bandwagon, bringing bottled and bond back into popularity. So we have close to 15 of those throughout the country that are in regular distribution. Of course, Old Fitzgerald, the Decanters series, is one of those that we have. Through the course of the 20th century, so much happened in American whiskey, and so much of that was negative, really, until we get to the last 10 or 15 years, right? And during that period of that down period of American whiskey in the 60s and 70s, being family owned and operated, which Heaven Hill was then and still is to this day. We actually had the third generation of the Shapira family take over the operations of the business earlier this year. We were able to operate a little bit differently. While some folks were, having trouble and in some cases having to sell the operation, sell the farm, et cetera, Heaven Hill was able to stay strong by again doing things a little bit differently. We diversified our portfolio, not just focusing on American whiskey, which brought in some additional cash and freed up some other cash, which allowed us to acquire brands, right? Focusing on the history and heritage, not only of what we've done at Heaven Hill over the last 87 plus years, but what the American whiskey industry has been doing specifically in Central Kentucky for the last 200 years, and trying to keep alive the histories and stories of these brands. And in 1999, that story comes true for Old Fitzgerald. Old Fitzgerald becomes a part of the Heaven Hill family. If you're unfamiliar, our original distillery where we barreled our first barrel of whiskey in 1935, it burnt down on November 7th, 1996. In about 24 hours, we lost 7 warehouses, 100,000 barrels of whiskey, all of which were up on top of a hill. One of the rickhouses took a lightning strike, we think. What happens to high proof whiskey sitting on top of a hill when it catches fire? Well, it creates a river of fire that goes down that hill. The distillery was at the bottom. What was really cool for the next almost decade, really, other distilleries were helping us, but really for those first 4 or 5 years, other distilleries were basically allowing us to do our entire production, whether it was at Beam or Four Roses, Brown-Forman. The list sort of encompasses all of the heritage distilleries. We were milling, mashing, distilling at those locations, and then trucking barrels or trucking liquid and then barreling them at our facility in Bardstown. In 1999, though, a group called United Distillers, which you may be familiar with if you've done your whiskey history reading, they actually still exist today. They go by the moniker of Diageo, though. United Distillers decided that American whiskey was dead and they were getting out of it. Fortunately for Heaven Hill, they had just recently retrofitted a distillery in downtown Louisville, and they, as getting part of all of their holdings in American whiskey, or the majority of them, they wanted to get rid of some brands as well as that distillery. And we were very quick to jump on that and purchase the Bernheim facility, which is still our full-time distillery to this day, for pennies on the dollar. I believe at that time it was production of somewhere around 400 to 600 barrels a day. So we purchased that distillery, and in that purchase, sort of a perfect conversation for the first week of the NBA playoffs, it was sort of like a 3-team deal in the NBA, right? That's the league that does 3-team deals the most, I think. We got the distillery, we got the Old Fitzgerald brand, we got the Cabin Still brand, we got the Dubonnet brand, we got the Christian Brothers brandy brand. The group out in Frankfurt, owned by Sazerac, Buffalo Trace, they got the Weller brand. A group out of St. Louis called Luxco got the Rebel Yell brand, the David Nicholson brand. These were all formerly Stitzel Weller brands that United Distillers had acquired after the Van Winkle family had sold out in 1967, shortly after the passing of Pappy Van Winkle. If you're unfamiliar, the Old Fitzgerald brand was Pappy Van Winkle's brand. That was the brand that he, as a whiskey salesman, he was not a distiller, that was his brand that he was out actively selling. He was famous to say the Old Fitzgerald was such a fine whiskey that no 5-star hotel in the world didn't have a bottle of it on the top of its back bar. So we were pretty excited to get this historical brand. We had actually never made wheated bourbon before. So we, much like the other brands that we had acquired along the way, we basically just started doing production of a mash bill that we thought tasted right and good and similar to the products that we could taste on the market, and then sort of reverse engineer. And Parker and his son, Parker Beam and his son, Craig Beam, who was helping him at the time, they started making Old Fitzgerald distillate, or OFD, as we still call it to this day, at the Bernheim facility. And we just basically filled the orders that were coming in from the places where Old Fitzgerald had been and had gone and sold historically. That was sort of our business model, right? When we acquired any brands, we basically tried to fill the case orders that were coming in. We didn't try to do anything necessarily new or different. We looked at it basically as free money, right? Because we didn't have the brands historically. Now we have them. Let's ship it and not mess it up, right? So as the days went by, wheated bourbon was gaining a little bit of popularity. Maker's Mark, I sort of wish you were wearing that Maker's Mark shirt so I could reference it even more. Maker's Mark, of course, was gaining in popularity, right? It was becoming one of the top selling bourbons in the world. Wheated bourbon begins to garner popularity throughout the country. And we see an opportunity to start to expand that line. I'll back up one quick second. In 1999, the same year that we acquired the distillery, Pappy's granddaughter, her brother, also known as Julian Van Winkle, or also named Julian Van Winkle, had done an homage to his grandfather, right? We're all very familiar with his, right? The Pappy Van Winkle line, the Van Winkle Reserve family line. That was his homage to his family and his grandfather. His sister, Sally Van Winkle Campbell, wrote a book called Always Fine Bourbon, the story of Pappy Van Winkle and the true story of John Fitzgerald. It's basically the memoirs of the family. It tells a lot of great family stories, but it talks a lot about the whiskey. And in that, there's actually an interview with the last surviving master distiller of Old Judge Distillery, where the brand was purchased from. Pappy purchased the Old Fitzgerald brand actually right at repeal of Prohibition in 1933. And that was when they brought it over and began Stitzelweller Distillery. And that's when he made the brand his lead dog, his go-to. And when Pappy was selling the brand, he talked about it as coming from or having been made by the best distiller in Kentucky, that being Fitzgerald. Or depending on who he was talking to, maybe change the story a little bit. Well, our master taster, I'm not sure if there was that title back in the day, but the person who's tasting our batches, he's the best palate in all of Kentucky. This was Fitzgerald, right? So these are the barrels that went into the labels under Old Fitzgerald, and the rest, as they say, is history and lore. But what this interview with the last surviving distiller tells us is that, yes, Fitzgerald did work at the distillery, but he did not work for the distillery. He was actually the government man that was in charge of gauging barrels as they go into the warehouse and gauging barrels as they go out of the warehouse. Why is that important? Well, because 60 cents of every dollar that we make of every bottle of bourbon still to this day goes to the government in taxes, whether it be the federal government or the state of Kentucky. 60 cents out of every dollar is going in taxes. So until Reagan began to deregulate the tax code in 1983, there was actually an IRS agent on site at all distilleries, making sure that distilleries weren't skimming anything off the top or fudging their numbers, this, that, and the other. And it turns out that Fitzgerald was a fan of the whiskey, right? He had keys to the warehouses and was sneaking in to the warehouses in the middle of the night and stealing sips, not from just the best barrels, but all of the barrels, therefore committing larceny. So when we found out about that story, as the Old Fitzgerald brand was sort of growing in our portfolio, we were seeing it being pulled a little bit more. We had some desires to play and swim in that same pool as Maker's Mark. We decided to use that great story for a brand story and launch a product that was similar in production style to Maker's Mark, right? Maker's is 90 proof, 6 years old, and a wheated bourbon, right? So we had our wheated bourbon. Their mash bill is a little bit different than ours. They have about 4% or so less wheat in theirs. Ours is 68% corn, 20% wheat, 12% malted barley. So we actually launched the Larceny brand as a 92 proof small batch, or the Johnny Fitzgerald's Larceny brand in 2012, telling the story. The brand has done well since then. It's one of we in industry terms, we call it a hot brand year over year, which means it's selling over 500,000 cases. But as those of you who have been fans of Heaven Hill for a long time, or maybe if you've been just becoming fans now, you know that one of the things that we also do well is high proof, barrel proof, extra age, right? We have the largest holding of barrels over 8 years. For those of you that have gotten into our barrel proofs, one of the more common responses I get when people first try, whether it's Elijah Craig barrel proof, Larceny barrel proof, or now Bernheim barrel proof, holy cow, that's 120, 130 something, whatever it is. Sure doesn't drink like that.
Or our Elijah Craig barrel proof pick that we just did at 131.
Oh yeah, I still need to taste that.
It's good.
I look forward to that. I'll never forget the first time I did one of those tastings for a barrel. A guy took a huge swallow, like, I mean, probably like twice as much as that. And that was his taste. I was like, that was 137 proof. He goes, didn't taste like it. Feels so good. I'm like, okay, you do you. It's Tuesday afternoon at 1 o'clock, but hey, who am I to judge? Larceny was off and running, and I'm telling you a little bit of the backstory in this training. I had been on the sales team for a couple of years, and I was thinking of a way, how could we really go big with this new product that we're going to have, Larceny barrel proof? I'm really big on this idea of terroir in whiskey. I'm not big on tasting notes. You're not going to hear a lot of citrus and raspberry and marzipan and tobacco and leather and marshmallow and, you know, your grandmother's living room and cherry blow pop and this, that, and the other for me. But I'm fascinated by the process of aging, right? And I'm fascinated by the process of aging and then tasting it in that capacity, right? Basically straight from the barrel or straight from our tasting room, which is what these barrel proof products that we've put up are. They're basically small batches that have been batched straight from the barrels and then put in bottle. So I really wanted to tell the story from birth to bottle of OFD to Larceny barrel proof, and being that the general product that you see on the shelf is a mingle of somewhere between 150 to 300 barrels. It can be less than that. It can be more than that, depending on the flavor profile that comes out and sort of what we're looking to bottle at the time. But generally speaking, it's going to be in that range of barrels that have aged anywhere from 6 to 8 years old. So what we're going to do today is we're going to try OFD, Old Fitzgerald distillate. I mentioned it's 68% corn, 20% wheat, and 12% malted barley. We're going to taste that growth, that evolution, right? From fresh off the still at Bernheim with nothing added but a little bit of Kentucky water, then a 2-year, 4-year, 6-year, 8-year, and finish with Larceny barrel proof. Sound good? Any questions from what I've said so far?
Yeah, sorry. So understanding you take over the Fitz line in like 99, 2000, but you guys do change the mash bill slightly. Is that what I or you try to mimic it, but it's not the same thing? I'm trying to understand. Sorry.
Yeah. Yes. I'm not sure there's anyone that knows what that mash bill was, at least within our facility. This is, you know, it's sort of the same with our rye mash bill as well. When we acquired Rittenhouse, we went for what we thought was a good whiskey.
And that was going to be my other question: is do you know how close it is to the original one versus how close it is to the Weller line?
Okay. I don't. That's something that I'll be in Kentucky next week, and I will see if there's someone that has been added to the team, or maybe somebody's done some research on it. And if I find that the answer to that question, I will let Vadim know to let you know, Jordan.
Awesome. Thank you, brother.
And I like your dad jokes. Keep them coming on the chat. So I mentioned we're still distilling at the Bernheim facility. Today in 2023, it is the largest single site bourbon production facility in the world. So at Heaven Hill, we do make 5 mash bills, only 2 of which are bourbon. So the times when we're making the 3 other mash bills, rye whiskey, wheat whiskey, and corn whiskey, it's not the largest American whiskey distillery in the world. That belongs to Jack Daniel's. It's not the overall largest production company-wise of bourbon because Beam has 2 facilities. But as far as one single site making whiskey that then becomes bourbon, Bernheim has it at 1,500 barrels a day. which is pretty darn awesome. And we're doing that probably 290 to 310 days a year. We're making bourbon, primarily HHD or HH Reg, which is our 78%, 12%, 10%. So corn, malted barley, rye that becomes Elijah Craig, Evan Williams, Henry McKenna, et cetera, et cetera. And then we're doing weeded bourbon, probably something like 30 days a year. We're doing rye whiskey about 15 days a year. We're doing wheat whiskey about a half a day a year. So when we do that, we start in the first shift making wheat whiskey, and then we finish the day making OFD or wheated bourbon, and then we're sort of filling in the schedule with corn whiskey. So everything's happening there. We're getting 1 million pounds of a million pounds of corn a week. I'm trying to remember the math problem. Once we're tasting, I'll look it up on my phone. But I think it's 10 acres, no, 10 by 10 yards of corn per 750 bottle of bourbon is what that works out to, which is pretty amazing. But so we get out of the distillery, everything comes off the still, whether it's one of those 5 types of whiskey, it doesn't matter. Everything comes off the still at 138 to 139. We try not to get above 140. That then goes into a tanker. It's about a 50-mile ride from the Bernheim facility out to Bardstown. Everything goes out there uncut in the trucks, sits in the holding tank. We can only bottle about 1,000 barrels a day. So we're missing by 500 barrels. So we have about 15 different humongous, I have no idea. They're probably about 127,000 gallons. I think they're the same size as our fermenters now that I think about it. They go in the holding tank, and then generally the next day they are put into a barrel. So what you have in your first sample, the new make, that's going to be 125 proof. That is what we put everything in the barrel at. I've heard making whiskey referred to as the most fun math problem I've ever done. Not me. It was a quote from one of our master distillers. Most of these guys nowadays have some level of engineering background, mostly chemical engineering background. So fun math problems is a funny dad joke for them, I guess. But basically the way it was explained is, you have so many things, you only have so many things that you can keep constant, right? The cleanliness of the distillery, where you're getting the grains from, the quality of the grains. Once they're delivered, the fact that they are all usable and still in very good quality, the cleanliness of the distillery, and then the process through the distillery. My computer wants to shut down and do a restart. Thank you, IT department. And so that's why one of the consistencies that we can get to is where we're taking it to proof wise, and then what we're finally putting it in the barrel at 125. Because once you put it in that brand new American oak container that has been charred, and generally speaking, they're American oak containers from our friends at Independent Stave Company, who you can see here on my hat, primarily American oak from the Ozark region. And they are level 3 char, so that's about 45 seconds on fire. And then the whiskey goes into those barrels. It's put into one of our 60 or so warehouses around Nelson County. We're building a new rickhouse every 6 months or so, a brand new rickhouse now, which is basically a wood structure wrapped in tin with a lot of screws, costs about $10 million a piece. So throughout this, I'll throw out some numbers like that, and you'll start to get an idea of how much money is being spent in bourbon country if you multiply what we're doing by the other 10 or so large heritage distilleries, and then think about how much a bottle of Larceny barrel proof, Elijah Craig, Evan Williams, whatever costs. It's pretty fascinating and amazing. But we put it in the barrel at 120, 125, and then we're done. It goes into the warehouse, and we have no control anymore, right? I mean, I guess we could move the barrel, but a barrel's 500 pounds, and the more if you try to move it, more than likely you're gonna break it. I see some stuff going on in the chat, Vadim. If there's something you want me to answer, if you'll just chime in and let me know. I'll happily go over to that too. But once it's in the warehouse, that's when Mother Nature comes into play, and that's when that terroir that I was talking about earlier really comes into play. Wine folks don't really like it when spirit folks, specifically whiskey folks, start talking about terroir, because they're like, no, it's our word. And when you're talking about terroir and wine, you're talking about the soil, the vines, the grapes, the rocks, the way, the climate, the incline, the decline of the hill, where the sun's hitting, yada yada yada. Yes, whiskey is an agricultural product, but all of that stuff is taken out in the distillation product. Like, I've heard many people much smarter than me with much better palates than me talk about, if there's somebody who can pick out the species of corn after it's been distilled and aged in a barrel, I will pay them $1 million. Like, that's just not happening. It's not it's gone. So when we talk about terroir, it's that same environmental impact, right? But it's the environmental impact on the barrel in the warehouse. Is it north facing? Is it south facing? Is it east facing? Is it west facing? Is it in Kentucky? Is it in Tennessee? Is it in northern Kentucky? Is it in eastern Kentucky, western Kentucky? Is it in the case of Heaven Hill, is it on the Heaven Hill main campus? Is it in Deatsville? Is it in Cox's Creek, where we have entirely new warehouses that have only been being built for the last 5 years or so? Is it in, one of our Shinley, one of the warehouse sites that we got from Shinley, warehouses that are almost as old as Heaven Hill is? You're going to get different environmental impact. And of course, we're taking notes as we're tasting different barrel samples from these, and we're building products from these barrels as they're going into bottle, as they're being tasted, and we're keeping track of them. Historically, it was much more, there was more like, there's the guy and he's got the thoughts and the tasting notes in his head. Now we have a whole team, a quality control team. Everything's being input into a database, and then we have a CFO who they all report to, who is an absolute spreadsheet master. And anytime a barrel goes out, RFID tag is scanned, we know what brand it became. Let's say it was part of the batch that won World Whiskey of the Year from Whiskey Advocate for Larceny Barrel Proof or Elijah Craig Barrel Proof. All right, well, we're going to put an OFD barrel back in there the next time we pull something like that. So let's go ahead and try this new make before I get on to any more progression of it. Is this anyone's first time having new make? Cool.
By the way, when I was bottling this new make, I was bottling it the same day that I was bottling a vodka from another brand. I was like, oh my God, this is so much more flavorful. This is so good.
Yeah.
And at 125 versus 40%, I was like, oh my God, all day long. People like brands that need to just sell new make, like good new make.
It would be interesting to see how that would work. I'm not sure what the market would be like. I'm not sure what the taxation would be, how that would work, but that's another question that I can ask next week when I'm in Kentucky and follow up with you.
There's a lot of people like Jordan who like to do barrel aged stuff at home with like a little barrel. I'm sure that would love to have a little fun. I think there's only one brand that sells it. Legit.
Oh yeah, that's what so that's what this is actually. This is you can see the color of it. This is a blend. We used to actually, Christian, do you remember when we had the Tribox series?
I don't know if Christian's still here. He had he's back. Okay.
I can see him.
The Tribox series, it just wasn't selling as well back then.
Yeah. So Vadim, we actually did have a new make series out there. It was called Tribox, and we had every one of our mash bills available at barrel entry proof, and it was I think it was $30 a bottle. And it came out, when sort of the moonshine craze was going on, and like, what was that, like 2009, 2010, something like that. And then we cut it off in 2000, I want to say 14 or 15. But I had a handful of bottles left in my garage when my son was born. So this is a mingle of 3 of them, as well as Georgia Moon, which is unaged corn whiskey at 80 proof. I put this in a 10-liter barrel that had previously aged a Manhattan at one of my accounts in San Francisco. And then I let this age for a year. And I pulled it out of the barrel. I put it in April 1st, 2019, and pulled it out May 13th, 2020. And that's serious color from a year. And it's really good. So, I mean, Jordan, I'm not a scientist, I'm not a chemist, I'm not a distiller, but if you ever get into that, let me know. I always think it's fun to see what people do with that stuff. But yeah, I mean, I think Vadim, where you were going with your point on this is that most people think of high wine or moonshine or gut rot whiskey or something like that when you think about new make. But here's the thing: you can't make good bourbon. I'm going to try to be on brand here. You can't make good bourbon without good distillate, right? So that's, again, going back to one of those things I was talking about where, you know, we have to be responsible for the constants that we can, and then fingers crossed once everything's left open to Mother Nature. And it's one of the reasons I love doing this event, because I love hearing people's response to the new make. So if people want to go on mute and talk about the new make, that'd be great.
I definitely get a nice sweet note. I definitely can taste that corn base on it. You know, I think it needs a little more aging. No offense, but
a little more aging.
Yeah, I think it has potential.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It's
Yeah, I
got
like
a surprisingly creamy mouthfeel for a new make.
I was about to say the same thing. You know, I think I just got finished saying that I don't talk a lot about tasting notes, but like, you know, the peanut butter sort of Reese's cup that I get from a lot of our whiskeys, I think is really ever present in this new make here, which I think is really cool, especially since I'm not allowed to eat Reese's cups anymore. Forgot my samples in the garage, and you're all enjoying this too much. Duh.
I think the new make is pretty darn delicious. I think that would make a really great mule. But really straight out of the bottle was pretty stinking good. So
yeah, it's when Vadim was talking about bottling it with some vodkas, we actually have historically done some blind tasting stuff, and we'll pull out, you know, we won't do it really for public consumption. We'll do it with, you know, bartender friends that we have, where we'll do a blind tasting of some of our new make against some of their tequila, some of their vodka, some of their whatever white spirit. And it's really fun to see people's minds just do somersaults once they realize that one is vodka, one is new make, one is tequila, and how similar they are. You know, you go into tasting these things with preconceived notions of what they're tasting, what they're going to taste like. Is the new make available in Bardstown? I don't believe it is anymore. No, I mean, I can say with 99.9% certainty it is not, but there have been times
I was
when
there
people,
a few months ago and it wasn't there.
yeah, there are times when people go and they're like, oh, and I think it was Vadim who actually showed me when I was talking about the year we began, and then he had a hat on that was the year before. So I tried to.
That was my hat. That was my hat.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Yeah, that was great. Yeah, you sent Vadim the picture of it, and he sent it to me. Yeah.
Yeah.
So speaking of the variables in the process, if we want to move on to the 2-year, I do have, I'm not sure how Vadim got the samples to y'all and what information he gave you, but while he's out getting his samples, if someone would just like to tell me what the proof is on your 2-year, because I have different samples than y'all.
124.5.
Okay, cool. So into the warehouse at 125. The 2-year-old sample sat in Rickhouse L on the 6th floor. So Rickhouse L is on our main campus at Heaven Hill. So Whoever's been back and been to the Bourbon Heritage Center or the Heaven Hill Bourbon Experience, which is what it's called now, this is basically right across the street. This is where one of the rick houses stood that we have since resurrected after it burned down in the fire, and it aged on the 6th floor. So you said it was 124.5, Orlando, I think you said. So only lost a half a proof point in 2 years, which is pretty minimal. The one that I have here, lower floor, 123.7. So still hasn't lost a ton, but has lost more in 2 years than yours. But that would make sense, right? Because we're putting stuff on the higher floors that we're not going to let age as long. But again, there is some science and some data on why we would put some of these barrels up there to try and get a flavor profile from a more intense aging for maybe only 4 or 5 years. Because what we're doing, even though I said that the mingles are generally barrels 6 to 8 years, there's no age statement on the label, so we can use a 4-year-old barrel in the mingle if the flavor profile tells us that it should go in there, right? For those of you that joined me before, I probably mentioned my good friend Tawny Goatee, who's our master taster. Her official title is actually quality control manager, but master taster is much sexier, right? She's tasting anywhere from 150 to 200 of these samples this size every day before lunch. She's doing a lot of spitting, but she knows, similar to what Vadim was talking about when he was pouring the samples, she knows by the nose of the whiskey what brand it's going to become. So Connor O'Driscoll's our 7th master distiller. He's very quick to say that, look, I make distillate, right? I do not make brands. It's up to Tawny and her team to judge what the whiskey is giving them to then turn them into whatever brand they decide to become. And in this case, it's going to be either Larceny or Larceny Barrel Proof, or the old Fitzgerald Decanter Series bottled in bond. What's the cut? Taste mint on the first taste. That is, I've seen, heard, felt that taste on Larceny Barrel Proof multiple times. So I think you are spot on in calling that out, Tony. I was actually with Bernie, my boss, and Denny Potter, our previous master distiller who left to go be a Maker's Mark and now is off starting his own thing. We were with the group, and that was the first time that someone had called that out. It was actually the group we were with tasting what eventually became the original batch of Larceny Barrel Proof back that was released back in 2018 that was only available at the Bourbon Experience.
It's interesting when we're taking younger whiskeys, it's usually smaller distilleries, and I usually get kind of a grassy note that I just don't dig, that I'm waiting to age out, and I don't get any of that here. I mean, it's a little hot, and I could tell that it needs to mellow with age, but I'm not getting like oh, I want that flavor aged out. It's pretty nice.
Which is interesting because depending on who you talk to, some will say that you're not going to age that out, but sometimes you do, sometimes you don't, I guess. Yeah, I mean, once we get through these, I'll be interested to hear everyone's take on which was everyone's favorite, because I think that it's not always what you think it's going to be going through the process. And I do think that I've done this probably 8, 9, or 10 times now, and the new make usually gets somewhere on the podium. Yeah, I was going to say some sentiment as well with the mint, Kyle.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think my palate's reading the cinnamon, because it finishes with a little bit of a mint, but I'm not getting the full mint, so I think that's what I'm reading.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, there's a Christmas spice going on for sure. So interesting that I almost got that totally wrong. So the 4-year, I have a little key here I do another tasting like this where they mix up which sample is which because we don't want people to know. But this one, you know what everyone is. But so they had 4. It went 2, 6, 8, 4, and I was about to start talking to you about the 6 and not the 4. So if we want to move on to the 4-year-old, it is also a Heaven Hill main campus rick house, the A warehouse, and it is floor 5. So if someone wants to let us know what the proof on that sample is, that'd be great. I would imagine
125.3.
so interesting. It sort of begins to mellow out. Now, of course, these aren't from the same barrel. They're a snapshot of the age of barrels that would become Larceny barrel proof in different lots. So it's interesting to see how, again, the different warehouses work in different ways, right? Rickhouse A is probably 500 yards from Rickhouse L. Generally speaking, they're basically, A is like this, whereas L is like this, but about 500 yards apart. So they're generally getting similar sun, obviously very similar seasons, because 500 yards really isn't going to change that much. But, as the saying goes, barrels are like snowflakes. No two are alike. Even 2 barrels from the same distillation run next to each other in the rick house are going to taste different 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years later. So there you go. Let me see if I can get a nose on this. Vadim, success getting your samples?
I get more sweetness and more baking spice on this one than the 2-year.
So my 4-year is 126.8. So interesting that they're sort of following a similar pattern, right? But mine it looks like the samples that I have, they were pulled about a year before y'all's, have a little bit, or sort of following the same pattern, but a little bit wider of a spectrum.
Yeah, Jack, I got a 126.1, so it's right there.
Okay. Are yours the samples from the first time we did this?
Correct. Yeah. So what is that? 3 years ago?
That was the first time we ever did this, 2019. So yours are older than mine are from 2020, and I believe Vadim's are probably from last year.
I think it was 22 is what it said, and ours is 125.3.
Yeah.
And the 4-year, honestly, I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, I'm going to be in Kentucky next week, and I'm tasting some barrel samples from barrels that were distilled the same day my son was born. So that'll be fun to taste some for you. But I'll be tasting the HH reg, so the traditional bourbon mash bill.
Do you need to borrow a whiskey thief for a slip of the sample for your son when he's 21?
I'm trying to. I may get the whole barrel. Not sure yet.
There you go.
We'll see. I'm gonna have to get some investors involved on that.
Some 21-year-old Heaven Hill at some point.
I
Good
think
investment.
Vadim knows a guy that can help you.
Yeah.
We'll talk offline.
I'm
There's
sure
no chance
Jordan.
There's no chance I'm letting that barrel age for 21 years at Heaven Hill. It's coming out sooner rather than later.
For sure. I'm sure Jordan already asked this question, and I want to ask it before somebody else does. Did he ask if you have any malt laying down? All the big brands are throwing out a single malt at some point. Is Heaven Hill jumping on that bandwagon?
We have not. We have released a malt back in 2015, the Parker's Heritage. I think I have a bottle of it right here. Yeah, I do. Funny you should ask. No, we haven't and somebody threw the website up earlier. I saw you can find this on there. But this was basically panned by the whiskey internet of the time in 2015, and now it's becoming one of the more sought after ones, like the one from the previous year, the wheat whiskey. My understanding is that we have not distilled malt whiskey in probably since then. There's all sorts of different experimentations going on, but I can say as of, I think the last time I asked Connor about that was about a year ago. So we may have run some in the last year, but not to my knowledge.
But malt whiskey doesn't necessarily mean American single malt, right? It could mean
No,
or it would be.
no, and Christian, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm not even sure if the U.S. standards of identity, I'm not sure if that new classification is fully a part of that yet. I know
It's
that
not yet.
yeah,
It's in the final stages of it.
They've been hammering out those details for years now.
yeah. And you know, I'm not sure how much the general public, and I'm not looking at anybody on the screen as the general public. I'm the general consumer that, you know, is going to Walmart and buying a bottle of Evan Williams. I'm not sure that general consumer necessarily cares about it. So I think a lot of distilleries are really sort of hedging their bets on whether or not they're going to do it, how much they're going to do it. I would imagine, and again, I can, Vadim, if you want to write down all the questions that I'm going to ask next week and send them to me, that'd be great. I can ask that next week as well. You know, what do we have left? What are we going to do with that? Are we going to use that to play in the pool with these folks? I'm not sure. I've seen some stuff come out from Kentucky, from some Kentucky malt. You know, I mean, our friends at Rare Character, I think, have done a Kentucky malt or doing a Kentucky malt. So they had to have sourced those from somewhere. So people are doing it. I don't know. There's a lot of great whiskey out there. So, you know, we'll see.
I just threw in the link, Jack. That rare rare cask.
Oh, that one of the RB ones is malt. I couldn't remember.
It's fantastic, yeah. And it's they have at least 10 bottles left. So
yeah, I've had some of them. They're good. But yeah, I mean, the interesting thing with a lot of I see your question about the oldest stocks. I'll answer that in a second. I think, you know, it's really interesting about experimentation in American whiskey, because I think American whiskey really is so new to everyone. It's going to take some time. I mean, you've seen it even in, you know, the example that I just showed. I mean, it takes years for even the most of the aficionados to get used to the idea, or to try some of these types of bottles. And then how does that relate and turn into business? I don't know. It'll be interesting to see as it goes forward. The oldest that we've ever released, Russ, is a 27 year. That was 4 years ago now. It was actually a barrel proof 27 year at 90, right around 94 proof. So a great one to talk about in this lineup, because you're seeing the variation of barrel proofs, right? That had sat on the first floor of a rick house for 27 years. And the proof had gone down so much, because the floors of our rick houses are dirt. There is no floor. It's the rick, and then it's the dirt, and all the possums and everybody are running around under there. So, excuse me, you know, when it gets to be -18 in the winter in Kentucky, I've come out of a bar at 2:00 in the morning in January. It was -18. I've been in a rick house in August at 118. When that -18 weather thaws, that moisture actually seeps into the barrel. The water molecule is smaller than the alcohol molecule, so the water molecule can actually go back through the wood and dilute the product even more. Even in the case of that 27-year-old, we pulled a number of barrels that were, in some cases, undrinkable with only a few drops left. and in some cases bone dry because it had all entirely evaporated. I think the bottling batch totaled like 3 barrels for the entire release of that product back in 2019. We did I'll show you another one for my collection. Back Whiskey Fest, what year was this? I don't have a date on it. I think it was Whiskey Fest like 2012. We actually, when extra age statements in American whiskey started to become popular. I don't know, can you guys read that? We did a tasting of 30-year that we found. So we had some that was absolutely undrinkable, and then some that was quote unquote good. So this is one of the bottles of good that was given to me. So this is going to pay for my son's MBA at some point or something like that. Maybe I'll get to drink it, who knows? So, you know, another one of the reasons why I thought of this training to finish the answer to your question, Russ, is to really begin to hopefully start to dispel the myth of extra age being extra good, right? As we taste through this, it's a good time to move on to the 6th year. You can see, is age necessarily better, or is it just a different part of that really fun math equation, right? In my opinion, it's just another one of the variables in that really fun math equation. You know, when you get to some of our older age products, you know, talking, you know, what Vadim was mentioning about y'all's private barrel, when I've been on some of those private barrel tastings, I tend to like the younger side of those more than I like the older side. I'm not a big fan of heavy barrel influences, but that's my palate, not yours and not your friends that you're drinking with, right? So moving on to the 6th year, what proof do y'all have in yours?
$128.2.
128.2. Okay, cool. So still moving up in proof, and mine is sort of par for the course. Mine's a couple of proof points higher at 130. 6-year Rickhouse Y floor 6. So these first 3 samples all aged in generally high territories of the Rickhouse, where we would generally pull stuff that ages in the 4 to 5 to 6 year age range and maxes out. So that's pretty cool. But the proof is getting higher, right? Because the water is evaporating because it's more intense up there. Again, the water molecule is smaller than the alcohol molecule. So it makes sense that the proof would go up as we get older and continue to stay in those upper echelons, upper floors of the Rickhouse. And if you're unaware, our Rickhouses are 7 stories high for the most part. And you can see behind Christian, 3 barrels high per floor. And in the traditional ricking system that was patented by Mr. Stitzel in 1874, man, dust in my little room is really getting to me. I apologize.
Or it could be the 130 proof.
I'm barely having a sip of anything. And I don't have any water either, but I do have a Guinness, so maybe that'll help. The ricks don't touch each other, which is really cool. It was modeled after an Old English style of stacking hay. So what you're able to do in the traditional rickhouse is really create airflow, opening the windows. The barrels don't touch longwise. They don't touch between the head and the tail of the others. And it really creates a nice environment for that aging of, 4 to however many years on up of the whiskey.
We picked a barrel at Elijah Craig. We got this pretty rad panoramic photo.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I take off my fucking filter. It's just that's not stretched out. That's just using the panorama feature. It's pretty rad.
Yeah. That was cool. Did you do the tasting with Sylvia?
Yes, sir.
I was just talking with Sylvia this afternoon. She was sanding the front of her house, getting ready to paint it, put it on the market. I'll tell her next week. Y'all said hey when I'm there with her.
There you go. I like it.
The 6-year for me is a treat. It's the one that I look forward to in this tasting every time, and has not disappointed me yet. Guinness is the ultimate palate cleanser. I thought it was a good idea when I thought of it, and it has been successful so far. But you're speaking about the aging out different flavor profiles, you're really starting to get a rounder mouthfeel in the whiskey, right? A more robust overall taste of the whiskey. You're still getting a lot of sweetness, a lot of the harshness, I think is coming off a little bit. You're just getting sort of a very mellow whiskey across the front mid palate into a very dry finish, which I really enjoy in the 6-year, but still some very nice sweetness on the as it goes through that mid palate. So now we get to the 8-year. I love the 6-year. So good. I always have a hard time differentiating butterscotch and caramel. Yeah, that last sip that I just took, Jane, definitely has a little bit of kick. That's why I'm sitting there sort of waiting to nose and taste the 8-year. So I've got my 8-year is drops down low to 118. How about y'all? Where are you at on your 8-year?
It's 114.5.
Oh wow, overtook me. So that's really cool. So you're in Rickhouse Double D, which is Deatsville, one of Parker's, as they call honey holes, and that's on the first floor. So you're really seeing what I was talking about in that 27-year-old going on here in y'all's, right? 8 years on the first floor, you're seeing a lot of added water via reverse osmosis, and the water molecules coming from the moisture in the air into the barrel and diluting that whiskey, which I think is really, really fun.
This 8-year has a lot of floral character that none of the previous ones seem to have had, at least that I'm picking up.
I've definitely got some floral notes on mine. I had a little bit of floral on the 4, but mine isn't also lovely as well.
Wow.
For me, right now, the 8-year-old is probably the most. I mean, it goes between the 6 and the 8. I mean, there's definitely some things that I may have expected to experience on the 6 that I'm now getting on the 8. My tongue is just dancing from that whiskey coming across my mid palate after the 8-year, whereas it's nowhere near as high proof as the 6-year in either case. But I'm really getting a really nice whiskey in this 8-year.
Yeah, I'm just getting like a river of melted caramel right down the middle of my tongue with just baking spices dancing on there. It's really, really lovely.
A wonderful image. A river of caramel with baking spices dancing.
I'll do an interpretive dance of that later if I have another couple of drinks.
Send us a video. We look forward to it. Yeah. Jesse and Albert, it sounds like the 6, you're big fans of the 6. Excuse me. Excuse me I'm gonna go on mute for 1 second.
while he's on mute, I was gonna let you guys know, I put some of those hyperlinks as we were talking about them. The 27-year, the Rick Houses, the brands. Those are all on the heavenhilldistillery.com website. And you can really get lost on that website between the blogs, the podcasts, the information they give you. It's pretty dense what's available on there.
Yeah, it's something that we've really put a lot of effort and concentration on. Thank you for bringing that up, Christian. When I'm doing these in person, I show people on my phone the website. Excuse me. It's a website that I'm on a number of times a week. It has so much information. I mentioned it at the jump, keeping alive the history and heritage of American whiskey, not just what we've done at Heaven Hill, but overall is a big part of what we do day in and day out. And that website is really, ground zero for all of that. We've got a great podcast that we started in 2017, I think, called Tales from the Hill. Interviews with Connor, with Connie, who I mentioned, her husband, Pat, who runs our barrel warehouse team. I'm on there a couple of times. Bernie's on there. Max Shapiro, the whole Shapiro family's on there. You can go on there. You can see how our distillery operates, all of our mash bills, all of the products that come from all of our mash bills. We really try to be an open book, because how can we educate you guys without telling you everything, right? We used to say that no one's going to go recreate what we do, but then Wilderness Trail built a distillery, and now they're doing anything and everything they want, including mimicking mash bills, which is really cool and good for them. I mean, they are, when I was back in Kentucky in November, they were the talk of the town, because they just, two guys have just made $450 million for that. So maybe some people will, but hey, you still got to wait 4 to 6 years for the whiskey to mature. But we're really proud of that. And any questions that you guys have, of course, you can always send to me and Christian. You can send them directly to the website. And generally, if you say, hey, I'm Wade from California, they'll send me your question. So it's a pretty cool asset that we have, and we're really proud of it. So
personally, for me, that's one of the things that makes Heaven Hill one of my favorite distilleries. Not afraid of age statements, not afraid of doing barrel proof stuff, and open about mash bill.
Mm-hmm. Wade, you'd be shocked. Most people do that, actually. And then no one in Kentucky knows the difference between San Diego and San Francisco.
No, that was Vadim that said that he's going to.
Oh, that was Vadim. Yeah, sorry. No, I appreciate you saying that. I think that was Jesse that said that. Yeah, we pride ourselves on trying to be only HHN. We try to pride ourselves on being transparent. Sometimes people don't like it, but most of the time people do. So we try to do it the same way each and every time, and we can't control people's response. But thank you for saying that. So the piece de resistance, Vadim, I'm not sure if there was a date on the bottle of the Larceny barrel proof that you were sent, or if it says the batch number on it. I just got a sample of the brand new one, so
I took a photo of it, so I'm gonna find it right now.
Okay.
June 11, 2021.
Okay, so that was the B521, which is,
And actually all of our samples were June 11, 2021.
That's what I assume. That's basically when I do these, they do a big batch of them for me, and then because obviously it doesn't age in the glass, so they'll do another batch for me probably in another few months, because I'm probably through those. I think I have the B521 somewhere. I just saw it. No, C921. Oh yeah, B521 right here. Yeah. 121 proof.
Yep.
Yeah. Cool.
On the dot. And that's cast strength at exactly 121, right?
Yep. Yep. So that I thought that was a cool one. That was our lowest proof at the time of these releases. The first handful of releases were all in the 123-ish range. And then this one went down, which I thought was really cool to see. But now you sort of see, as you taste this, you see the mingling of really the last two, the 6 to 8, with maybe a little bit of that 4 added in there and some parts in between. But go ahead and give that a taste and see how it compares to those previous samples that you tasted and whether you liked.
Make sure you save a little bit in your glass because we're gonna raise the toast in just a second. Someone page Jackie and Elijah to come back, and Russell. Paging Jackie, Russell, Elijah. There you go. It works. It works. Awesome. Jack, thank you so much. This is absolutely fantastic. I want to raise a glass to you and to Christian for being here, for making this possible for us, and to everyone else for being here, because Jack wouldn't do this just for me. I had to bring you all on board. So thank you all for being here tonight. Thank you for this opportunity, and cheers to you.
Ooh, that's really good. Cheers. Thank you. And I'm more than happy to hang out for a little while and answer any questions about this whiskey, about other stuff that we're doing. I know we've talked a little bit about some other stuff that Heaven Hill is doing, which is sort of my favorite part about being able to represent Heaven Hill is, there's the invite can be about one thing, but there's about 115 other things that we can have asides about. So I'm down to hang out for a little bit.
Yeah, we're definitely not ending the call, but I do want to take a moment to take a snapshot of everyone. And we're going to do a poll in just a second, but please keep going.
Did you just take a screenshot of that?
Yep.
Can you send that to me?
Yep.
Thank you. Had anybody had the B521 before, or is this your first time?
First time for me.
First here as well.
Is there anyone that collects the samples or the bottles through the years? There's got to be somebody who collects.
I've got a few.
There you go.
I mean, I've had them, but I drink through them. But
Hey Jack, I gotta ask you. So where are you located? Where's your home base?
Are you looking for GPS coordinates or general geographic region?
Well, so I guess I'll tell the whole story. So a few weeks ago, Vadim did an Elijah Craig his barrel pick release, and I opened a bottle of the Evan Williams single barrel that I opened the night that he distributed it to his group, and I have a little bit left. So if you're here in Southern Cal, I recommend you get over to my house stat, because I've got a little bit left. It's an 1996 bottle. It's pre-fire.
Oh wow!
And so I've got a little bit left, and it's going fast though.
Yeah, I'd love to taste that sometime. Well, Vadim, if you want to connect us, and maybe we can all meet up somewhere.
But yeah, I can pour an ounce in a bottle and save some for you. But
you guys are like 10 minutes apart from each other.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I'm here near Culver City. I'm here just east of Culver City, Jack.
There you go.
Yeah, I'm in Baldwin Hills.
Oh, really? I'm in Bowen Vista.
Oh, okay. So you're probably
like literally the same name.
Yeah. Yeah. So
I'm
probably
at the
not
bottom of
even.
the hill.
Yeah, you're not even.
And it wasn't my barrel pick. It was our barrel pick. Everyone in this room.
It was our barrel pick. Thanks.
That's right. You have a bottle. Everybody's got a bottle.
But
so you both live in the
same.
same areas where we lose cell phone reception every single time.
Yeah.
So I've got Cheviot Hill. Cheviot Hill.
This is a 97. Al.
Yeah, my bottle was 96.
Yeah, I found this on a liquor store in the middle of the city of San Francisco.
So my bottle was actually signed by Parker Bean.
Oh, nice.
So I saved the bottle, but I still have a little bit of the juice left. So you need to come by.
Cool.
it's very good.
Let's do it. We can go meet up at Alta in West Adams, or Etta, or.
Have you been to Maslala?
It's
I
extremely
have.
very good.
Oh, Mislala is so good.
I have been to Mislala. It's delicious.
Yeah, I've
I
got a
wish they
couple
did-
of shot glasses that Parker signed.
I wish
met
they
at
did
Bardstown at Toddy's liquor store.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Vadim, you got 2 options for 8-year on that poll.
You trying to do 2/8 there, Vadim?
I've been drinking too much of the 8-year. Pick one of them. That'll do. I was wondering why I had more than 6 options.
Now we know what Vadim's favorite is.
If we send it again, no, it doesn't matter. Hey, Jack, I'm in Culver City too. So if you, I don't know, I've aged 26 cocktails during COVID. I probably
Oh,
have
wow.
like 5 right now. I feel like I'm near what used to be Toys R Us, over on Jefferson, Mesmer, Jefferson, Spolvita, that area where the post office was. It's being torn down. Anyway, if you ever feel like coming by, I'll happily pour you a couple ounces of each. I probably have 4 or 5 right now. So you can see
Yeah.
barely.
down
If
for
Jack
sure.
survives today,
Yeah. If I don't cough myself to death, I'm not really sure what's going on here.
So Jack, question for you, like out of y'all's lineup, what is your go-to product that you tend to drink more often than not?
Oh, I'm sorry, Elijah. Let's get you some samples. Sorry, I'm sitting here. I have the B521 and the B523 that I'm tasting between. What is my go-to? I don't have a bottle of it in here because I keep it. So this is like my show off bar. And then the actual like daily bar that I make drinks at is in my kitchen, which is 50 feet that way. Then our new revamped release of Evan Williams 1783 is my go-to now. It was Elijah Craig small batch before that, and Elijah Craig small batch is still sort of my like 1B. But the Evan Williams 1783, I've always sort of been a fan of that line just because it was sort of different and you weren't able to didn't have such large distribution. But the revamp of it is really fantastic. And as I mentioned earlier, I do enjoy, those caramel, butterscotch, brown sugar notes more than the barrel notes. And I think when you get in the 6, 7, 8-year range, you're finding those there more as opposed to when you get up into the 10, 11, 12. So there's slight differences. The Evan Williams 1783 is 90 proof. And that's one of the reasons why I tend to go to it more, because a little less proof is better for as much as I'm out and about and consuming whiskey. Yeah, it still holds up. It does everything that I needed to do, whether it's neat, whether it's on the rocks, old fashioned. And my old fashions, I don't put sugar in them. I just do whiskey and bitters. And it provides enough sweetness to still be a nice round cocktail, especially with a little bit of dilution. And then even a Boulevardier, which is my sort of complex cocktail go-to. I will tell you, since we're talking about Larceny, I historically have not been a huge fan of the Manhattan cocktail. I say that, but I was a fan of Manhattans, but then they just became too sweet for me. I was introduced to the perfect Manhattan, which you may be familiar with, is just a split base, half dry, half sweet vermouth. And that with Larceny is a knockout. When I think of Manhattans, like I don't really think of them as light and refreshing. And a perfect Manhattan with Larceny is exactly that, light and refreshing, which is good and bad considering that I am out so much and drinking so much. I usually drink them in 2 sips. So that's sort of where I am from a go-to perspective. I saw that somebody mentioned the Bernheim barrel proof in the chat. I'm not sure where that is in distribution yet, but it's gonna make some waves once it gets out there and has a couple seasons under its belt for sure. Also,
You'll see it here in SoCal, May 1st. We're gonna start shipping out May 1st to the stores.
yeah. And if you if you find yourself in the presence of a bottle of the new Heaven Hill 20-year-old corn whiskey, it's worth it. It's worth it if you can get it for a reasonable somewhere between first, primary and secondary market cost. But, I'm not going to tell anybody to pay $1,000 for a bottle of anything. What else? I've been missing what's in the chat. Somebody's getting reprimanded.
I was gonna ask about the so your Pikesville and what's the other rye you guys have? You guys have the two ryes that I look at.
Rittenhouse.
And a Rittenhouse, right? So I look at both of those as cocktail ryes. And they're both I guess Pikesville is 110. They're both pretty
Pikesville's
close.
Sip and rye, baby.
Is it? Okay. Okay. I was gonna say, do they not cannibalize each other in the market? But then again, you have 10 bourbons in the lineup, so it seems like a stupid question. I really think about it.
We actually have three ryes in our arsenal now.
Oh, what's the third?
Elijah Craig rye.
Oh, nice.
So I would say that, Rittenhouse, I mean, they're all versatile. So to some capacity, right? I agree. I think it was Orlando that said that Pikesville is a sipping rye. I see people have old fashions with it. I see people make Manhattans with it. In my opinion, it's best neat or on a cube. I do have a rule: no Pikesville after 10 p.m. Because it drinks so incredibly well. But it is 110 proof, no matter how smooth it goes down. And after 10 p.m., 110 proof hurts a lot the next day. But yeah, I mean, I think Elijah Craig rye is an everyday, have it on the back bar rye. It's not going to impose on anyone's palate. It's not going to overpower anyone. It's going to make a great cocktail. It's going to be great neat. And then Rittenhouse is, just the MVP of ryes. I think whatever you want to do with rye, Rittenhouse can do it for you. And it was really it was the product where I was always a believer in blind tasting, but it was the one that really nailed it home for me. I was not historically a fan of Rittenhouse. I had an account in San Francisco that every time I would walk in, they'd be like, "Jack's here, round to Rittenhouse." And I'd be like, "Can I have a Mellocorn or something else?" And then when Old Forester launched their rye, I did a blind tasting that was the Old Forester rye, Wild Turkey rye, Overholt's reintroduced Bottled and Bond at Rittenhouse. And I knew which one Overholt was automatically. Beam Stuff just has a nose that I know. I guess I can thank college for that. And then the other three were very close, but there was one that had a nose and a flavor profile that I'd never experienced before, and I was so certain it was Old Forester, and it was Rittenhouse. So newfound respect in the last 4 or 5 years for Rittenhouse. So they definitely have different uses, and it's, to your point, Vadim, we have 100 different bourbons, and they all come from the same mash bill, and those 3 ryes come from the same mash bill, and yet they're wildly different. It's just the magic of the Rick House in real life, right?
E&L just had a single barrel Rittenhouse. I mean, it was released in Bottle and Bond. It's stupid good. It's like $25. It was stupid. It's stupid good.
Yeah. I've been getting a lot of direct messages of Rittenhouse single barrels in Instagram the last couple of weeks.
There you go. If anyone else had it and disagrees, let me know. But I jumped on it right away because I tend to trust K&L, and I don't know. I think it's pretty ridiculous.
Is it still there?
I think it sold out pretty quick. I mean, the 100 proof, but it was, I want to say it was $25, $22, which you can't get.
I think it was 27, but yeah.
Yeah, there it is.
Same bottle, same label. I'm not sure what that looks like.
Yeah, here, let me try it off my black background again. Can you see it? So just say, it is 100 proof. It just tells you where it's from. So this is, it's barrel 21918, Rickhouse K, floor 7. But it was,
Oh, wow. That's cool.
Yeah.
I haven't done a lot of tastings of those because it's a fairly new product. And generally when I've been out in the market, I've missed them. They've been in production getting bottled. So I'm excited to get back out on the road here next week and start getting some prideful pours of those from folks. And
Speaking of barrel picks, I heard a rumor that there may be mellow corn barrel picks in the near future. Is that a real thing?
it's been a rumor for a long time, but it's not a real thing as of yet.
Okay.
There have been, to my knowledge, 3 that made their way to the market. One in 2015, one in 16 or 17, and then one in, I want to say 18 or 19. But they were all sort of backdoored. And it has been a rumor, and it was swimming to the surface, we thought, and then it got pushed back down. So if you follow Cumming whiskey, that's how you'll know, because that's usually how I know.
And the new 20-year-old Heaven Hill corn whiskey, is that just a 20-year-old mellow corn? Is that
No, it's not, because mellow
Okay.
corn is bottled and bond at 100 proof. This is same mash bill, but 20 years aging, and then it's bottled at 114 proof. Excuse me one second, I'm gonna go on mute real quick.
Did everybody vote? I'm gonna close up the poll. Hope everybody voted.
Jordan, I just looked up my K&L email and I paid $34.99 for the single barrel.
see,
So I don't, maybe you got it cheaper than me. You got to hook up.
Feel trap memory.
Nice.
How much did you say you got it for K&L?
34.99.
Okay,
What's that?
I thought you said like 25. I was like, yeah, because I think it's 25 that cost.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was my memory off. I apologize.
All right, Jack, what do you think was our favorite of the night in the poll?
6.
All right, let me share the results. And the people have spoken. Their favorite of the night is the final product, actually. 5 people voted for that, 38%. And then second place is 6-year-old.
Cool.
Yeah, it's pretty close.
6 is I would say it's the majority of, we haven't done a straight poll like that, but just in a quick sort of show of hands, it usually is the one that gets the majority.
For my palate as well, the 6 or maybe even the 4 were the ones I prefer the most. The 8 was too oaky for me. And I remember being surprised by that too last time we did this. Sorry, what was that?
The 6 was still pretty hot, I thought. It was a very long, spicy finish.
So it might have been the 4. Yeah, the 6 was hot. You're right. Yeah, the 4-year that I really enjoyed was very mellow for me.
I just lost track of which
It's
one I
also
tasted.
the highest-
Oh, that's it.
So there's that.
I was about to start tasting back through mine, but I've already dumped some of mine. But here's the 6 again.
I inadvertently blended the 8-year with the new make, and it was delicious.
I did the same thing.
I was gonna say, is anyone trying to recreate the final product? Who's got a little bit of their sample left to try to?
The 6 is hot, that is for sure, compared to the barrel proof and the 8. So the one thing that I did want to try to be able to share with you all is how to proof down But the spreadsheet that we use is quite a complicated
Bring it on.
mess. And if
Albert's
anybody,
here and he's a PhD in mathematics. He can figure out any spreadsheet.
I can tell you that for 50 milliliters of 128.1 proof, to get it to 92 proof, you add 20 milliliters of water.
Okay.
That's a little more math than I can do after 6 ounces of whiskey.
Come on, doctor.
Yeah.
I once sat through a 2-hour TED talk from Albert telling me how to put in formulas into an Excel spreadsheet to get the results I wanted. It was fascinating.
I impress myself sometimes, but not tonight.
I was trying to think of a witty response to that, but I couldn't think of anything. So that's why I just stared longingly at the computer screen, hoping that something
Well,
would come.
The first rule of Excel is to never tell anyone you know how to use Excel.
Right. There you go.
I've made that mistake.
I've made that mistake a couple of times too. The floor is very muted after once going backwards, but still good. What else? Any other questions about Heaven Hill? Anybody have any trips planned back to Kentucky coming up anytime soon?
I'll be going back in June.
Awesome.
Yep.
You have
I'm
plans made
thinking about
already?
the fall.
No plans yet. I know it'll probably be towards the end of the first week in June.
Well, start making your plans now, because stuff books generally 6 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks in advance.
I was there in November and definitely plan on going back. I think in October, I'm bringing a group with me.
Yeah, I was there the first week of November last year. It was absolutely glorious. And then I was back in the first week of December and it was freezing cold.
Yeah, I'm thinking about October for my birthday this year.
It's a great time to go and see if there's a race.
Okay, Amanda, I got it. Can you take a week off in October? I will bring your ass. I'll try.
If Keeneland is open for races in October, which I think it is, you should go.
We'll go back to Kentucky again this year to do barrel picks, but only single malt.
Where are you going?
No, I don't know yet. We did 2 picks in September. We did 7 picks in September, and we're still waiting on 2 of them to arrive.
Have you seen or done any yourself? Any light whiskey picks?
We have not.
I asked because I was with a group about a year ago that was on their way, I think, to Tennessee to do that, and I was like, interesting. Because light whiskey is basically what began the downturn of American whiskey in the 60s, light and spirit whiskey. And I was like, isn't that interesting? People are just basically going to get barrel picks of anything that they can get just to say that they got a barrel pick of something. Well, I look forward to when you guys can try the new B523 because it is fantastic. I apologize that I don't have enough to share with anyone. Well, with the entire group.
There's not that many of us. Come on, Jack.
I just got it this weekend, so couldn't have turned it around.
Just feel free to pour it right into your USB jack. It'll get to us.
Please do.
That'll probably make that update work that I just canceled out of.
I mean, it's Heaven Hill juice, Heaven Hill computer. It makes sense. It should work.
Yeah, makes sense to me.
If it fails, then that's clearly an IT issue.
Yeah. Yeah, but Vadim, moving forward, and for the group, it sounds like there's a handful of folks that live generally in the same areas that Christian and I do. We're more than happy to put together a happy hour somewhere. We have plenty of places where Christian more than I have great relationships, where I'm sure there are places, if we wanted to bring a sample or two of something, no one would give us too much grief, as long as we shared with them and also bought some cocktails and some of their whiskey as well. So moving forward, as we get into the summer and have later nights, feel free to throw out some options for that, guys.
Hey, so I'll mention, and this is a small group, and with Vadim's permission, can you nod your head, Vadim, to give permission? You're not sure? So I do monthly events at my home on Thursday nights. It's actually the third Thursday of each month.
Okay.
And so this happens to be the third Thursday this week. So in 3 days.
Wait, I feel like I got your card or somebody gave me your website. Do you have a website?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram. I don't wanna steal Vadim's thunder.
No, please, Dr. Whiskey, go right ahead.
Yes.
Yeah,
That was where was I? Somebody showed me your website a couple weeks ago, and it said you were in the neighborhood, and I was like,
Yes, I'm not that active on Instagram, but I do have a Dr. Whiskey 310, and it's really just a community event, and Amanda and
Cool.
Jane have all been here, and Vadim has been here, and many of you have been here, but so I'm here near Culver City and near Baldwin Hills on Thursday night. So contact me, Angelino 310. Angelino, like Los Angelino 310. And we'll be here Thursday night. I'm actually making a pot of soup on Thursday night. So it's dinner and drinks in 3 days.
Cool.
I will be out of town, but I will be very sad to miss it.
You know where I live, Vadim.
I do. I might just show up. Yeah, so it won't be in the valley. It'll be on the west side, Elijah. Most likely. Do you like that? Quad H? Heaven Hill Happy Hour?
Heaven Hill Happy Hour.
I like that. Quad H to the 4th.
Too bad you can't have it at the Howard Hughes Center, because then you can have multiple H's.
Ooh.
Come on, man. We can meet up at Islands. Let's do it. Islands, Howard Hughes Center, Heaven Hill, happy hour.
Man.
Does Honda have a some kind of hangar?
No, but I have a Honda.
There you go.
Heaven Hill. It's the Heaven Hill Honda.
All right.
Cool, guys. Well, if there's no more questions,
do you want to guess what the results of this poll were for
a Heaven Hill happy
hour? Yes, there are options for yes or no.
I would imagine everyone said yes.
Can you imagine if it wasn't unanimous? I'd like start kicking people out.
That's great. That's great. Well, yeah, I'm serious. I mean, it's fun to get out and share some whiskey fellowship. And for those of you that are, if any of you are south, I've done some happy hours with the Women Who Whiskey in Long Beach at the Hawk. And we're trying to make that a more regular thing as well. All are welcome as well. So, Vadim, if it's something that you want to, we can collaborate on together in a central, I mean, shit, have whiskey will travel, right? Christian and I both are all over the greater LA area. So I see the folk in the valley. I was just looking at some place that has a location in Woodland Hills and Sherman Oaks that has our product. So, there's, Black Market Whiskey or Black Market Liquor Bar has a ton of our stuff that's on its way up there. So
Mr. Rose is another great place.
Cool. Yeah, we have a lot of members on the west side, a lot of them in the valley, and then a couple down here in the South Bay as well. So yeah, there's really great groups out here. I mean, we saw you at the West Coast Whiskey Club guys and Women Who Whiskey. So yeah, great people out here.
Don't forget the foothills. You've got a lot of members up like Northeast Valley. You know what I mean? Like Northeast LA, like Eagle Rock, Glendale, La Crescenta, up that way.
Yeah, I like it up there.
Just saying, throwing it out there. If I don't have to drive, I'm game.
If you're out that way, go check out Gem City Saloon. They didn't have any Heaven Hill products until last week. Now they're doing a barrel-aged Larceny Old Fashioned, and it's incredible.
Which place did you say?
Gem City Saloon. It's in like the Monrovia area.
Okay, cool. Thank you. That's not
All
too
right.
far. But to
need
be
it.
clear, that's East Valley.
It's all valley.
Everything east of the 405 is east.
I need dispatch to tell me where to go.
Is that Christian? Breaker.
Yeah.
North of the 101 and east of the 405. You're in the valley.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I like
I'm
the valley.
south of I-10.
There we go. True.
Just then there's someone really south of I-10 in Pensacola. Cool, guys. Well, have a great night. I look forward to hopefully doing a happy hour, and I'll Angelino 310. Is that your Instagram?
You're muted.
I see that, yeah. So I actually just sent you an invitation to follow you, so
Oh, cool. Awesome.
should be easier to contact you. Yeah.
Perfect. I'll accept it. Great.
Yeah.
Awesome. And then you and I will chat offline and we'll set up a happy hour and invite some people out for sure.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
Awesome.
Happy Monday.
Thanks, Jack.
Enjoy the playoffs if you're NBA or NHL, and enjoy baseball season, or enjoy whiskey if you're not a sports fan.
Go Heat.
Sounds good.
Later, Jack.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, guys.
Yeah.
Bye.
Have a great night. Thank you.